Welcome back to another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast, the podcast where we discuss everything Orlando Magic basketball. I'm your host, Jalon Dixon, and today we got a couple of things to get into ahead of the Orlando Magic game against the Philadelphia 76ers. But before we get into that, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers and trying to become one of the biggest Orlando Magic podcasts here on the YouTube platform. So remember to hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. And as usual, thank you to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring the podcast. Again, thank you to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring the pod. Let's go ahead and get right into it. And we got to talk about something that's been kind of weighing on me for quite some time now. But now I finally have the statistical background to, I would say, validate my feelings. And that is the Orlando Magic fourth quarters are ones to behold because they are the difference between jumping for joy and having a complete heart attack as an Orlando Magic fan. And I mentioned kind of in passing the other day that the Orlando Magic have had, I believe it's anywhere between, I think it's either 5 or 6 game-winning shots just this season alone. Or for Paolo Banchero specifically, this was his second game-winning shot, the one against the Brooklyn Nets the other night. Desmond Bane also has 2 of his own this season. And in passing, I kind of addressed how the fight of the, not even in passing, a whole segment of last podcast, check that out by the way, was dedicated to just the thought processes around the Orlando Magic just wanting it more in this game in comparison to their matchup prior against the Washington Wizards, and the need for specifically the Orlando Magic starters to prove that they could get the job done. But in the midst of all of that, one thing I didn't talk very much about was that the Orlando Magic have this way of playing down to competition in a way that I think is truly going to dictate the ebbs and flows of this season. Both it could be a net positive, but I also believe that it could be a net negative depending on where the season is at any given time. For example, during January, I've mentioned it, I think, multiple podcast episodes now, that the month of January is supposed to be a very favorable stretch for the Orlando Magic as far as strength of schedule, right? You come from the 6th hardest strength of schedule to one of the better ones, maybe top 5 to top 10 as far as where it ranks amongst the rest of the NBA. And in a weird way, I almost feel more concerned about how the Orlando Magic performed during this stretch than how they did during the earlier portions of the season. And a lot of that has to do with the fourth quarter. So I'm burying the lead a little bit here. Shout out to our friends over at Orlando Magic Daily who did a little bit of the math for me, a little bit of the research for me to kind of validate my feelings around how these fourth quarters specifically are kind of illustrating this issue the Orlando Magic have as a team that seems to struggle to hold on to leads, and more specifically against teams they really should not be losing to. It says the Orlando Magic gave up a 15-3 run to open the fourth quarter in the loss to the Golden State Warriors, turning a close game into a runaway. They scored only 12 points in the fourth quarter of a 1-point loss to the Toronto Raptors just last week, losing on a 3-point attempt from Banchero at the buzzer. The game winner on Wednesday was redemption for that moment, but played out much the same as that disappointing defeat. The Magic were in control of the game and fell flat in the fourth quarter. That has been the main pattern for this team. Orlando is 24th in the league with a minus 4.3 net rating in the fourth quarter. Their 109.8 offensive rating is 25th in the league, and 114.1 defensive rating is 16th in the league. It feels like the fourth quarters have been uneasy exercises all season. There's a good reason. If it feels like the fourth quarters have been an uneasy exercise all season, there's good reason. It has been. They are critical lessons the team needs to improve as the season progresses. Jamal Mosley said it keeps creating the resiliency that we know this group has. It's building for the future and what we're going to go through. Anytime you can learn lessons is a win. The Magic are struggling to finish games. Only these heroic shots have saved them. And I think what I'm trying to say, or what I'm trying to illustrate, is my biggest worry here is that The Orlando Magic are being saved by something that I've seen help or I guess hurt a team in the past as far as presenting fool's gold. I don't know if you guys remember that. I believe it was the 2021 DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine led Chicago Bulls. That Chicago Bulls team had one of the best fourth quarter point margins in the NBA off of the strength of DeMar DeRozan, who was averaging, I think, double digit points in the fourth quarter. I think it was like 12 points in the fourth quarter or something like that. He was Mr. Fourth Quarter. This was literally the year before the Clutch Player of the Year was presented. So I want to say this was 2021 or 2022. It was one of those. Somebody can fact check me, but I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. He was king of the fourth quarter. This is the same season that he hit the game winner against the Indiana Pacers and then followed it up the very next night, winning a game, hitting the game winner over two contested players. I think Kyle Kuzma was one of them in a win over the Washington Wizards. Ironically, I was actually at that Washington Wizards versus Chicago Bulls game. I think it was right after New Year's. I think that might have been in 2022. Nonetheless, that team was not as good as their record showed, not as good as their overall team production represented, and it was proven because once they lost Lonzo Ball, they get to the playoffs and they only win one game against the Milwaukee Bucks and then get absolutely whooped on by Giannis and those guys. Excuse me, who I believe in that season went on to win the championship. Which, I mean, not bad to get whooped on by the champions, but neither here nor there, right? And I think this Orlando Magic team is in for a rude awakening, very similar to that Chicago Bulls team if they keep down the route that they've been on, which is relying on fourth quarter heroics to essentially save them. Again, as Mosley said in this piece here, or after Wednesday's game, yes, a lesson can and should be learned from winning tough, close basketball games, especially for a young basketball team like this one. I would also say that in the same realm, this is a team that really needs to learn how to keep a lead. They really need to learn how to keep a lead, especially because some of these games have been ones where they've lost or nearly lost to teams that are quite clearly inferior to them. Right? So against a more talented team, the New York Knicks, against a Detroit Pistons team, against a revamped Milwaukee Bucks team, if they keep Giannis Antetokounmpo, which it seems like all indications are leaning that way, along with maybe them getting a Zach LaVine, Jeremy Grant, they make some significant moves on the margins to really boost their talent across the board, and you got Giannis at the forefront of that. Like you run into some of these other Eastern Conference teams, the Boston Celtics, who have been, getting MVP level contributions from Jaylen Brown, paired with the fact that, I mean, they could make a trade at the trade deadline. Jason Tatum could come back later on the year. Like, if the Orlando Magic run into the wrong team, thinking they can get away with what they've been able to be, relatively successful with throughout this season, which is like choking away fourth quarters and then winning in the final moments, they're going to get a rude awakening from some of these better Eastern Conference teams. And that doesn't even take us to if they were to get to like the NBA Finals and play an Oklahoma City Thunder, a Denver Nuggets, a Houston Rockets, right? If you play one of those teams playing this way, you're going to get blown out. You're going to play in a 4 to 5 game series and get sent home really wondering what you did wrong when the writing was on the wall the entire season, that the way you were winning games, the way you were getting away with winning games was not conducive to winning postseason basketball. So this has been something that's really been stirring up in me for the last couple of weeks in particular. And I've tried to bury it because I tried to put a lot more stock into, well, they're not healthy. They're missing Franz Wagner, who's a big-time scorer for them. Paulo Banchero still trying to work his way back in the state, getting healthy post-groin, groin injury, things of that nature. But this is something that I think if it sticks around too long, it's going to be worse than just a lesson. It's going to be a rude awakening for the Orlando Magic if they don't get this figured out very, very soon. And I think that's just very important for them to consider, because this is cute for now. pre-All-Star break and all that stuff like that, dealing with injuries across the roster. This is cute now while you have all the excuse in the world to just get a win. I said a million times on the podcast the other day, a win is a win. It might have been ugly. It might have not been the way you want to beat a Brooklyn Nets team that got a big-time performance from rookie Yegor Demon, got 34 points from Michael Porter Jr. Like, that's not the way you want to win against a team like that that's in the A.J. DeBonta, Darren Peterson sweepstakes, right? But at the same time, yes, a win is a win. But as they accumulate these wins, how you win becomes that much more valuable or that much more of a talking point as we get closer to postseason play, where the way you win is almost as important as getting the dub. Yes, getting the dub will move you along in the series, but as a team can scheme up for you over the course of 7 games, how you win becomes that much more important and influential on how you're able to actually win 4 games out of 7. And I think that's going to be huge for the Orlando Magic moving forward. Next up, a little bit of a Orlando Magic versus Philadelphia 76ers preview. The 76ers are actually favored by a point and a half coming into this game, which I found very intriguing given the fact that Joel Embiid is unlikely, or at least the reports as of right now are saying he's unlikely to make the trip to Orlando for this game. And he's been absolutely balling over the last 5 games. Philadelphia's 4-1 in their last 5. Embiid's been averaging almost 30, shooting almost 54% from the floor, 8.2 rebounds, 4.6 assists, 1.2 blocks, and he's playing 34 minutes, which again, this is a guy that we're used to playing on a pitch count so far this season. Only played 26 minutes in the game against the Washington Wizards earlier this week. Like, this is one of those games where, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what the case is for the Orlando Magic. They're going to be without Franz. They're going to be without Jalen Suggs. They may be without Jace Richardson, who still seems to be dealing with this left ankle soreness. We're going to see how that is. As of right now, he's listed as questionable. If anything were to change, that would, of course, really influence things in favor of the Orlando Magic. But for now, the Magic are coming in as underdogs at home against the Philadelphia 76ers, who are roaring right now, by the way. And quite frankly, this should be something that I think the Orlando Magic should take to heart. Like, I really think the Orlando Magic should view this as one of those games. Again, first off, have I mentioned enough on this podcast how the Orlando Magic have not been able to win back-to-back games since the end of December it was either after or around Thanksgiving? Yeah, Christmas has passed since the last time this team was able to put 2 wins back-to-back. They have a chance to do it again now. After beating Brooklyn, they have a chance coming back home after, I believe it's like a 4-game road stint, 5-game road stint, something along those lines. They have a chance to come back home, and I think they have about 4 games in a row playing at home to kind of rekindle what it was that they had earlier on in the season, where they started to kind of start rolling after that Desmond Bane shot against Portland. This is a chance for them to finally get a little bit of a mini hot streak going and take down a Philadelphia 76ers team that might be without Embiid, which is a big deal for an Orlando Magic team that has kind of struggled to rebound on and off throughout this season. Like, the game against Brooklyn was a lot better on the offensive glass, but that had a lot more to do with 2 players, Noah Pinda and Wendell Carter Jr. Right? Like, this was not... Or excuse me, it was Noah Pinda and Goga Batazda, excuse me. So, like, this is a big chance for them to come out, dominate on the offensive and defensive glass, get a big top performance out of the post and mid-range area from Paulo Banchero. Really, really attack the paint as the guards if you're Anthony Black and you're, if Jace Richardson doesn't play, Jalen Suggs doesn't play, man, that's where things get really interesting, because you're not going to rely on guys like Tyus Jones to really attack the paint like that. This could be a really interesting Jet Howard game if he decides to put the ball on the floor. Like, I think this team should really be focused on getting the ball to the basket, pounding it inside, and attacking the offensive and defensive glass aggressively against this Philadelphia 76ers team, truthfully. truthfully, this seems like one of those games. If I'm not gonna say if this isn't the game that they put two and two together, then I don't know what is, because that feels a little bit too hyperbolic with this early in the season. Like, the Magic are bound to get a little winning streak put together at some point during this season. But if there was any time, like, it feels like the kind of momentum they should be building as they lead up towards those two back-to-back games against Memphis and Germany. Like, this stretch at home feels like the perfect opportunity for the Orlando Magic to capitalize on this. It'll be interesting to see how they go about it, but I think that this Orlando Magic team, this feels like the game. It feels like this game against the Philadelphia 76ers. All the stars are aligning. You beat the Nets off of a Hail Mary in a game you maybe didn't even deserve to win after blowing a 16-point lead. Now you get to play the Sixers at home, maybe no Joel Embiid in the game as well. It just feels like all the stars are aligning for this team to finally get a little win streak together. The question just is, can they do it? I'm going to say they do. And that takes us to our Underdog Fantasy sponsor segment of the week. And we are going to focus on Paolo Banchero. Look at the stats over the last 5 games. 19, 13, 30, 18, 34. Look at the rebounds. This is what I'm going to say. For this game, and I put so much emphasis on the Joel Embiid factor for a reason. In this game, if Joel Embiid does not play, and that's a huge if, but a likely if, the difference between listing him as questionable and saying that he may or may not play based off a game time decision and saying that he may not even travel with the team is a completely different thing. And as of right now, he's listed as questionable with the likelihood of not even coming to Orlando for this game. So I'm going to assume that Joel Embiid does not play. If Joel Embiid does not play, we have to smash the over on anything above 8 rebounds, anything above 8.5 to 9.5 rebounds, anything higher than that, we're smashing the higher on Underdog for that. Anything, if it's anywhere between 8.5 and 9.5 higher or lower on Underdog Fantasy, we are smashing the over. This feels like a Paolo Banchero like 28 and 13 type of game. Like those 2 games against Indiana feel like the way this Philadelphia 76ers game should go. I truly believe, and I see that I see that overall, it seems like he's trending back in the right direction, right? You see, he has those 2 games against Indiana with the Chicago game sandwiched in between. Then he kind of falls off against Washington, bounces back slightly. Obviously, the big-time game-winning 3-point shot kind of helps the statistics. But, I mean, remember, he was 0 of 4 from beyond the arc before he hit that shot. He hits that shot, finishes the game with 19. It would have been 16 and 0 of 5 from beyond the arc had he missed that game winner, the same way he missed against Toronto, sometime prior back, right? So I'm saying we're smashing the higher on anywhere, if it's anywhere between 8.5 and 9.5. Now, if it goes higher than that, be a little bit more weary. But if it's anywhere between 8.5, 9.5, if it's somehow projected lower than 8.5, we're definitely smashing the higher. But even 8.5 to 9.5, I think Paolo Banchero is walking his way into a double-double in this game. And with that being the case, I also believe that if Paolo Banchero, I would say, let's look at the range of anywhere between 22.5 and 24.5. I think if we're anywhere in the range of there, we're smashing we're smashing the higher. Now, anything above 26 to 26.5, let's go lower. I think this is a sweet spot where he's going to finish somewhere around 23, maybe 26. Maybe, and that's why I say you have to be weary. Don't smash the higher too aggressively if it's like 26.5. But if it's anywhere between 23.5 and 25.5, I'm going to say that you can hit that. I'm going to say that you can hit that higher. Anything over 26, I think is probably a little aggressive just because we know how Paolo Banchero can be. He ebbs and flows in and out of games. But I think this is one where my projected finishing stat line If I had to pick a projected stat line for Paolo Banchero in this Philadelphia 76ers game, again, at home, no Joel Embiid, I'm putting up, mine would be higher than 23 and a half points. We're going to go higher than 8.5 rebounds. We're going to go higher than 5.5 assists. Anything more than 7 assists, we may hit lower, because I think he's likely to be a little ball dominant in this game. And I think he's gonna ebb and flow somewhere between 5 and 7 assists in this game. I know he has a few games that range a little bit between 7 and higher, but I genuinely believe this is a game that I think he's going to be very aggressive with his shot, or at least he should be implored to be very aggressive with his shot in this game. I'm gonna take Paolo Banchero for higher than 5.5 assists. So that's higher than 23.5, higher than 8.5 rebounds, higher than 23.5 points, higher than 8.5 rebounds, and higher than 5.5 assists. No more than 7 assists in this game as my projected stat line. I think we're going to get a handful of free throws in this game. I would not be surprised if Paolo gets the free throw line like 8 times by the time this game is over. And I think the Orlando Magic, they're coming in as 1.5 point underdogs in this game. I think they not only cover that, I think that they should win this game relatively handily. This feels like anywhere between a 7 to 10 point victory in favor of the Orlando Magic, and that's why I feel like there's a lot of smash the hires for underdog in this game. With that being said, use promo code BASKETBALLFAN to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. Again, that's use promo code BASKETBALLFAN to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. Place the entry. Trust me on this one. I think we're going to be walking out of this one in a favorable position. I feel very confident in Paolo Banchero, and maybe I'm over trusting him, but I just think that our all-star forward is going to come out and be aggressive in this game. Last game against the Brooklyn Nets was too close for comfort. I think in this game against the Philadelphia 76ers, we're smashing the higher across the board. Paolo Banchero gets the job done. Next up, we're going to talk about something very brief that I thought was just an interesting little tidbit of news, which is that it seems that the Orlando area is looking to return to hosting the NBA All-Star Game very, very soon. Now, granted, it's 2026. The projection for this is trying to host the 2030 All-Star Weekend, but it sounds like something that overall the Orlando Sports Commissioner, or excuse me, the CEO and president of the Greater Orlando Sports Commission, Jason Siegel, has a lot of interest in, saying it's a big deal. Obviously, this community, on the shoulders of the great work that the Orlando Magic have done in this community, to have an opportunity to be back at it. These are generational opportunities. They come around maybe every 20 years. For us to get back, to be back at it in the running is really exciting, and a testament to the growing community that loves their basketball Orlando Magic, basketball and Orlando Magic. Gotta re-reel there. This year it is hosted in the Intuit Dome where the Los Angeles Clippers play. Now, he also goes on to say there's a lot of work to be done, but we're excited to get started and put our best foot forward so that one day we hear the NBA announce that the All-Star Game will come here in 2030. Orlando hosted it back in 2012. They also hosted it back in 1992. It'll be really interesting to see if this goes through. Again, this would be what? We're looking at 2030 would put it at 18 years, nearly 2 decades since the last time that the Orlando area got to host the NBA All-Star Game, the NBA All-Star Weekend. So not only is this a big feat for the city, but of course, as Siegel mentions, this is a big deal for the Orlando Magic organization as well. Just being viewed as a team that's in the limelight enough to even be considered as a hosting city, right? The Indiana Pacers, for example, got to host the All-Star weekend very recently, and granted, that didn't go as, uh many would have liked as far as the overall experience for both fans and players, it seemed, in that situation. But it's Indiana in comparison to Orlando. Not to be disrespectful to my Indiana Pacers fans, but I think that obviously very similar to a Los Angeles, or very similar to like a Vegas or somewhere of that ilk, Orlando is probably a very preferred place for a vacation style event like All-Star Weekend, where it's both a release valve for players and also a festivities chance for both players and fans, right? So I think this will be a big deal for the Orlando Magic and a big deal for the Orlando area. Would be very interested to see what that looks like, and I'm sure an announcement for this will happen within probably the next year or two. The NBA tends to plan these things out a handful of years in advance. The locations tend to be picked out very early on, and so this could be something that, given that it's 2026, probably within the next year, maybe two at the latest, we'll be figuring out who the 2030 All-Star host will be. Maybe it'll be the Orlando Magic. Last but not least, we're going to talk about some of the comments from you guys' from my last podcast, where we discussed a bunch of different things for the Orlando Magic. And you guys, there were not a ton of comments, but there were some very passionate ones in the comment section that I want to go over. We're going to read all of them, though, since it wasn't too crazy. Start at the bottom and work our way up since we started at the top last time. Rich Singh 4165 says, just trade Jonathan Isaac and play Pinda. Rich Singh, I like how you think. A lot of y'all know that I'm the certified Jonathan Isaac hater in the Orlando Magic podcast universe. I'm the guy who's always punching the door, punching the wall, punching the table, whatever I can punch that's hard enough for you guys to hear it reverberate through the screen. That I really am not a big fan of Jonathan Isaac. I'm not a fan of what his fit on this team is long term, both financially and in terms of how Jamal Mosley is deploying him. Is that Jamal Mosley's fault? Is that Jonathan Isaac's fault? Is a combination of the two? I don't know, but I don't know what, outside of clapping his hands together, pretending they're pom-poms, I don't know how much Jonathan Isaac brings on a nightly basis, especially when you factor in how much he's paid, and he's being paid like that for the next 3-4 seasons. I'm with Rich Singh on this one. I'm all over that. Says, yes, Coach Mose shifted the narrative to effort, not talent, by putting in all third team lineup. But what seems like takes Mose off the hot seat might actually put more pressure on the coach. Why? Because who else is responsible for the players' buy-in and thus effort? So your argument is actually the same thing that showed that the starting five may have quit on him may be the same thing that leads to his downfall, indicating that, I mean, if the starting five is going to quit on him, how much control does he still have over the locker room as a whole? That's a great way of looking at it. I would say that is a double-edged sword. I would say that we talked about some rumors slash reports earlier on the season that there was a little bit of static between Paolo Banchero and Jamal Mosley. This was right before Paolo went out with the groin injury, and that was its own issue of potential alienation that we talked about earlier on this season. This could be something that stems kind of similar to that conversation. It'll be interesting to kind of track along how that goes on. I mean, let's be honest, if Jamal Mosley does get let go at some point, that's going to be a huge point of contention as far as, was his ability to keep a grip on a locker room the biggest thing that led to his, later demise? That'll be a big question mark for this team if, again, Jamal Mosley is let go at a later date. We'll just have to see. Berto the Magician, shout out to you, as always, very active in the comment section, says, it feels so good to see Paolo hit a game winner, but there's no reason to be in this position against the Nets. I hope this is a spark. I do feel Mosley has lost the locker room to an extent. I hope I am wrong. Happy New Year, brother. Keep doing your thing. I appreciate it, as always, Berto. And I think you have another comment earlier that was, yeah, you have another comment as well. I'll respond to that in a second, but I want to respond to this one first. First off, thank you and happy new year to you as well. Second off, I totally agree against the Nets. Way too close for comfort. You're up by 16. You're supposed to finish that off. You're supposed to finish that game. The mere fact that this was a game that went to overtime where neither team cracked 110 in a game that went to overtime. You didn't crack 110 against the Brooklyn Nets. Mind you, this was an Orlando Magic team that was ranked in the top 10 in both offensive and defensive rating earlier on in the season. You can't muster up 110 points against the Brooklyn Nets. Come on, man. I totally agree with that. And then as far as losing the locker room, again, I'm not willing to jump on that bandwagon just yet. But as I mentioned when I was talking about what I am all over that mention earlier, I do understand what you guys mean by that. I do see the writing on the wall where if Jamal Mosley does end up getting fired, I think moments like that game or moments or conversations like the one we had earlier about Paolo Banchero and his relationship, those are going to be the things that get brought up. Those are going to be the things that are first referenced when they're talking about what lost his job and then what we're going to be looking into as far as getting a different head coach at the helm. C Padron 56 says, if you're new, I think you might be new. If you are, shout out to you. If you're not, welcome back. I just feel like I haven't seen this name. Why they didn't play De Silva more in the fourth quarter when Bane and Black were ice cold makes no sense to me. Also, it is very clear Cole Anthony was the heart of this team, regardless of what you say about his play. I think Mo and Franz coming back is going to be a huge spark of momentum boost that we need. Love the podcast. Keep it up. See, I thought I saw your name earlier on in the tenure. Maybe you just haven't commented in a while. Nonetheless, thank you. I appreciate it. As usual, try to put out the best product as I can, especially when covering the Orlando Magic. But across the board in terms of covering the NBA, I definitely think that Mo and Franz are going to be a big resurgence. I think getting Jalen Suggs is going to be huge as well. It might take a little bit longer to get him back, but I think it's going to be huge too. Getting Jace Richardson with his the ankle soreness thing, like I think he's played well. It sucks that he had a really strong game and then the very next game he has to sit due to the ankle soreness issue. And this team has had to address the roster with such kid gloves because the injuries keep piling up that you're almost scared to play back-to-backs with these guys because you don't want anything bad to happen, right? So I think this team just needs to get healthy across the board. I can't disagree necessarily with what you said about Cole Anthony. I think he was the heart and soul of the team in an offensive way, the same way that Jalen Suggs is the heart and soul of the team in a defensive way. I just think the thing is that I don't want to say Cole Anthony ran his course, but I always felt like this Orlando Magic team was going to have to find a way to consolidate someone like a Gary Harris, like Corey Joseph, like Cole Anthony. I always felt like they were going to have to consolidate those guys into one or two guys that could fill that score first role off the bench in ways that, Cole Anthony was very aggressive in terms of seeking out his shot, but wasn't the most efficient three-point shooter, very streaky as a scorer. I always felt like this Orlando Magic team needed to find somebody who was a little bit more consistent. Now, I think that's Jace Richardson? I'm not sure. Was that turning into what Anthony Black is and has become? Yes and no. I would say no, just because there's going to be a point where Anthony Black might be out of contention for Sixth Man of the Year because he might start too many games, right? Anthony Black kind of was becoming that guy this season, but because he may end up starting too many games, he might not even reach that status for all we know. And he might be Sixth Man of the Year caliber. But I still think that we need some kind of score first guy who could be a little bit more efficient. That's what scares you about a Cam Thomas, who's a high volume scorer, but we know he can be a 20 point per game guy. We've never seen Cole Anthony do that, and we've seen Cole Anthony as a starter before. We've never seen him play to that level before. That's why you bring up guys like a Malik Monk who can average 16 to 18 points per game off the bench and do it a lot more efficiently than even a Cam Thomas or Cole Anthony can, especially from beyond the arc. Brings that athleticism as a slasher as well that knows that he can get to the free throw line a good handful of times. So I'm not saying you're necessarily wrong about Cole, but I think that there's a better player for the Magic to go get to bolster up that bench that'll eventually not make you forget about Cole Anthony, but make you realize that there is greener pastures. I'm just not sure who that guy is just yet. They're gonna have to land him first. We're going to go with these next few really quickly. Luis Rosario, 9522. Shout out to you as usual, always very active in the comment section. Now that Franz, Bane, and P5 have hit game winners for the Magic, who is going to be our go-to guy most of the time? That is a great question, given the fact that just a few episodes ago, I thought that guy was Franz. Now Bane has hit two. Bane has hit two. Paulo's hit two. Franz has hit one. Man, I have no idea anymore. Let's see when Franz gets back healthy, how the team kind of re-gels. It's a weird conversation to have without having those guys back on the floor. At least those three back together. So we'll see very, very soon. But I mean, hey, bro, your answer is probably better than mine at this point. Bernini fan says Paulo should bank in his 3-point shots for now on. Banchero is Italian for banker after all. Hey, man, if it goes in, like I said last podcast, a win is a win. And last up, we'll finish with Berto the Magician's last comment, which is one thing I like about Coach Mo, one thing I did like about what Coach Mo did was tell them to keep running the same inbound play. The reason I like it was because it kind of gave the trust in Paulo. Then again, it could have backfired completely, and we would be having a different conversation about not drawing up a better play. I'm assuming that you're referring to the game-winning shot in particular, and that's the 50-50 split you always play, right? Is when it goes in, you're the hero. When you miss, you're the villain, right? And who do you blame for that? Drawing up the play for Paulo Banchero. Do you blame Banchero for missing it as the star player that you should be able to trust in those moments? Do you blame Jamal Mosley for not drawing up something better that can maybe get you a more favorable shot? Do you maybe draw something up as Jamal Mosley that would send the game into a double overtime as opposed to going for the win? These are all questions that tend to be moot points during the regular season, but of course, during the postseason will end up mattering a lot more. So it just depends. Again, it's very good that this Orlando Magic team knows how to win these close matchups. Just blowing double-digit leads and losing fourth quarters to make games a lot uglier than they should be. It's quite the way to give an Orlando Magic fan a heart attack and not the best way to get your dubs throughout an 82-game regular season. But with all that being said, this has been another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast. Again, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. And shout out to Underdog Fantasy once again for sponsoring the podcast. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.